Today's Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019, and I'm opening this meeting for executive session. It's running a little bit late.
I apologize.
It's all good. We're the only ones here.
Don't be so formal. Okay, now we're good. Yeah, I have it. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 3rd, 2019, by the copy of said notice to the Tri-Town News and Star Ledger for information and publication on January 3rd, 2019, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 3rd, 2019. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with emergency exits for your safety. Upon exiting the meeting room, they are to your left and to the right. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Television. Roll call. Mr. Bonovich? Ms. Richmond?
Present.
Mr. Russo?
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Here.
Mayor Berger?
Here. Is there any reason to go into executive session this evening?
Yes, Mayor, we have items under attorney-client privilege and litigation to discuss.
Okay. May I have a motion for executive?
Motion to go into executive session?
Second?
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes.
I'll read the resolution for executive session. Whereas the governing body of the Township of Howell is authorized pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12 to exclude the public from that portion of this meeting for purposes of discussing specific matters as permitted by NJSA 10:4-12, and whereas the governing body of the Township of Howell intends to discuss certain matters which are deemed confidential pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12 in executive session, whereas at this time the governing body of the Township of Howell cannot determine the time when the discussion to be held in executive session will be made public, but will disclose the minutes of the executive session when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the governing body of the Township of Howell that this meeting shall be adjourned to an executive session and the public will be excluded in order that the governing body of the Township of Howell may discuss the items previously listed, and upon reconvening this public meeting, the presiding officer will announce, if possible, the time when and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in executive session will be disclosed to the public.
Good evening. I would like to open this portion of the meeting. It is, forgive me, 7:38 p.m., April 2nd, 2019. Yeah, before. Read the statement.
I did already, before executive.
You've got to read it again.
The executive minutes? You read that? The executive session minutes?
I read the executive session resolution and the public notice and the opening statement.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 19, 2019, and March 25th, 2019? Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes for both dates.
May I have a second?
I second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. We have some proclamations here. Pam, would you pass this to Tommy, please? And Evelyn, would you pass this to John, please? Go ahead, Tom. We usually read them from here.
Oh, sure, okay. Thank you, Mayor. From the Office of the Mayor, a proclamation honoring Cody Brook, Eagle Scout Award recipient. Whereas Boy Scout Cody Brook of Troop 300 has successfully completed all requirements to earn the title of Eagle Scout and will be recognized by the Boy Scouts of America for achieving Scouting's highest rank. And whereas the prestigious Eagle Scout Award is achieved by only 4% of all Boy Scouts. And whereas his Eagle Project, Cody, renovated the lounge at Chariot Riders, a non-profit riding facility, offering programs for children with special needs and veterans to improve the quality of their physical, emotional, and mental and social well-being. With the help of his troop, friends, and family, Cody gutted the room and made numerous improvements, including new paint, floor repairs, viewing counters, a television, new booths, and decorated with artwork made by the riding students. And whereas Cody chose his project recipient because of the work they did to help the community, the individuals Chariot Riders serves will be able to enjoy the improvements for many years to come. And whereas we congratulate Cody on his attainment of the rank of Eagle Scout and recognize the faithful and steady path he has taken with the Scouting organization to achieve this prestigious award. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Teresa Berger, and the council do hereby honor Cody Brook of Boy Scout Troop 300 on his achievement of attaining the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest rank in the Boy Scouts. April 14th, 2019, signed by Teresa Berger, our mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
My pleasure. We have a proclamation for Autism Awareness Month in April 2019. Whereas autism is a pervasive developmental disorder affecting the social, learning, and behavioral skills of those affected by it. And whereas autism was once thought to be a relatively rare disorder, only affecting 1 in 10,000 people. And whereas more and more health professionals become proficient in diagnosing autism, more children are being diagnosed on the autistic spectrum, resulting in rates as high as 68 children, 1 in 68 children. Whereas autism is the fastest growing developmental disability, and whereas while there is no cure for autism, it is well documented that if an individual with autism receives treatment early in life, it is possible for that individual to make significant improvement. Now therefore, I, Teresa Berger, Mayor of Howell Township, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Autism Awareness Month in the Township of Howell, and urge all employees and residents to participate in our municipality's Autism Awareness Month activities in order to become better educated on the subject of autistic spectrum disorders.
Another proclamation. Office of the Mayor, Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, April 2019. Whereas there are about 750,000 youth aged 17 and under living in New Jersey, it is estimated that 1 in 100 children experience abuse. Whereas childhood maltreatment and abuse are part of adverse childhood experiences and create long-term trauma that has lifelong impacts. And whereas child abuse is a significant social problem that creates significant effects for entire families, communities, and the society as a whole. Whereas our children are most valuable resource and will shape the future of Howell Township. And whereas effective child abuse prevention activities succeed because of the meaningful connections and partnerships created between child welfare, educational health, community, and faith-based organizations, businesses, and law enforcement agencies. And whereas We must work together as a community to increase awareness of child abuse and contribute to its prevention while promoting the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe environment. Now, therefore, Teresa Berger, Mayor of the Township of Howell, do hereby recognize April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in Howell Township, and urge all residents to become involved in efforts aimed at strengthening families and communities and preventing our children from being abused and neglected. Signed, Mayor Teresa Berger, April 2nd, 2019.
And our last proclamation for today is Arbor Day, April 26, 2019. Whereas in 1949, the legislature set aside the last Friday of April as Arbor Day to promote the planting of trees and to encourage the protection of our forests from fires and pests that destroy the beauty and usefulness of our woodlands. And whereas half of New Jersey's total land area is forested or tree covered, and whereas trees play an important role in the ecosystem in which we live, and trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil caused by wind, water. It cleans the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. It produces oxygen, provides habitat for birds and wildlife, and reduces heating and cooling costs by moderating temperature. And whereas trees are a remarkable resource, giving us paper for fine literature, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees provide increased property value, enhanced economic viability, and pleasing aesthetic qualities along streets and properties in municipalities. And whereas trees planting in yards and farms, in schoolyards and parks, and along streets and highways creates an enduring heritage for generations that follow. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Teresa Berger, Mayor of Howell, do hereby encourage observance of Arbor Day, April 26, 2019, in the community of Howell Township, and urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, to support our township's urban forestry program. Further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Is there any discussion?
I have one thing, Mayor. I also wanted to mention and highlight a young man in the Ramtown section of Howell Township who also attained the rank of Eagle Scout, Tim Konopka, son of our former mayor here in Howell Township. There was a ceremony in, I think it was the Elks Club in Ramtown School, I'm sorry, in the Ramtown section, right next to the firehouse. I should know that, I grew up there. It was a great time. I just wanted to, he was given a proclamation at that ceremony, but I also just wanted to give him a shout out up here.
If I might add to that, Mayor, not only did he attain the rank of Eagle Scout, but with the monies that he had collected for his project, which was to also beautify Echo Lake Park, the $360 that remained in that fund, he turned over via check to the Howell Emergency Food Pantry. So exemplary, I think, is an understatement. Also, we just read the Arbor Day proclamation, and I know we haven't put our Shade Tree Commission back together, but I would urge that possibly the mayor would consider just reappointing at this point people so that we can fulfill the month of April. And I mean, I feel badly that we have January 17th is actually began to unravel. Here we are, April 2nd. We still aren't in order. I find volunteerism may have gotten a little kick in the pants on this one. I don't like to have that. That is not the intent, certainly not from me. And I would encourage the mayor to reappoint tonight so that we can at least do the programs that are going to be in effect for Arbor Day. Thank you.
Brian?
Yes, Mayor, I have a few items to report on. To expand on the Arbor Day resolution, although the official day is April 26th, our schools normally participate in a large program. Because there's no school on that day, they'll be doing their ceremony on April 30th when school resumes. Follow-up from the last meeting's conversation regarding the Howell Community Garden. DPW has completed their assistance that was offered with their driveway. Was copied on an email that they were very satisfied with the results. And then there's a resolution on tonight for governing body's approval, supporting the grant for the fence that they were looking for. Next item, I was contacted by the mayor of Farmingdale to discuss expanding some of our shared services with them. I'm waiting on them to provide me some additional information, but I'll be reporting more on that as it comes available. But I would assume that would be in everyone's best interest. The Mackenzie House, as recently today, I was provided some information. Well, backing up, our attorney had sent a letter out to the, I guess, prior Historical Society, putting them on notice about their noncompliance with the agreement. To my knowledge, there's been no response yet. Just recently as today, I received correspondence from the new group looking to form, and I believe all you were copied on it. I don't know if anyone had a chance to review it yet since it did come in late today. But it would appear that they're starting to put together a decent plan in place. But again, there'll be more to report on that as it evolves. Finally, again, just today we received notice from NJDOT about a grant for $250,000 for the Howell Road project. It's a decrease of $100,000 from what we had received last year, and I believe Jim has some more to report on that.
We actually put in for 2 grants, one for West Farms Road, one for Howell Road, and we did receive the $250,000 for Howell Road. So we'll be still requesting additional funding in the budget. Mr. Bonovich pointed out today that we will be able to reduce that one capital line item by $250,000. However, we'll still need about another $165,000 to do the project that we need to do. Like I said, we didn't get the full amount that we asked for, but $250,000 is still $250,000. So we're going to take it. Hopefully we get the budget moving forward. We can start design work as soon as we get the go-ahead and hopefully have those roads paved this year. That's it.
Anything else?
Mayor, if I could just read into the record that there have been 2 resolutions added to the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Resolution R-19-132, it's item 9A13, oppose the formation of a stormwater utility pursuant to the Stormwater Act, and Resolution R-19-133, item 9A14, authorize and approve a grant application for the use of open space funds for a portion of a fencing and expansion project at the Howell Community Gardens, corner of Squonkam, Yellowbrook Road, and Adelphia Road.
At this time, I'd like to open the portion of the meeting for the hearing of the citizens. Barbara Dixell.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Barbara Dixell, 62A Piazza Vittoria, Freehold, New Jersey. Agenda items, have a couple of things. 9A4, can somebody explain that?
Mayor, if I may, this was an
Please.
item that was approved in the 2018 capital budget for DPW.
Okay. And what are you going to do with this truck? Public Works.
Used by Public Works to replace aging equipment.
Okay. 9A13? That's what you just added? Can you, somebody explain that?
Mayor, sorry, Mayor, if I may. So, Barbara, I've been getting a lot, and I'm sure other council people have been getting a lot of questions about the rain tax. Been in the news lately. Governor Murphy signed it into law, I believe.
Excuse me, what tax?
The rain tax.
What's that?
You ever heard of the rain tax?
No.
It's the Stormwater Act.
Okay.
So it was signed into law about two weeks ago, I believe, right, Joe?
Right.
All right, and Joe can flesh it out a little bit more because it is a complicated law, but essentially it has to do with stormwater utility. We already have one in Howell Township, and upon learning of that, I brought up to the professionals that we should opt out. There's an opt-out clause in the rain tax.
Okay.
And so I think we should opt out. I think we're taxed enough, and I think it's amount to double taxation, I believe,
Good.
because
We
we
allow
already have,
Guardians.
we already have a stormwater plan in place, so it'll be double taxation, in my opinion.
Why not? Good, from your mouth to God's ears. We don't have to pay for it, don't. State has enough money. Okay, okay. All right, your municipal budget, I'm going to make one comment. The ordinance, municipal budget appropriation limits and establishes a cap bank. The ordinance exceeds the municipal budget appropriation limits and establishes a cap bank. Okay, so you will, again, I keep saying this every year, and you're going to exceed the 2%?
Lou?
So the ordinance that's up for introduction this evening has to do with the appropriations cap that was introduced in 1977. It allows municipalities certain limits that the certain inside cap appropriations, which are generally your general salary and wages, vehicle maintenance, other expenses, stuff of that nature. Items that are outside the cap, debt service, our pension payments, our grants, dispatch, LoSAP expenditures. And each year the state, by local finance notices, issues to each municipality a certain cost of living adjustment that we are allowed to increase our inside cap appropriations. For 2019, it was 2.5%, and the state allows you by ordinance to increase it up to 3.5%. Historically, we have done this most every year in the past. We've had yet reason to use appropriation cap bank. It's just merely a use as a precaution in the event that, you know, some years' budget appropriation spike and it's more for precautionary measures. But the only way that we are permitted to do it is by ordinance and increase it by that 1%. I think the cap that Ms. Dixell is referring to is the 2% levy cap.
2% cap, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's being exceeded to 3.5%?
The appropriations
Yes.
cap is being proposed to be increased to 3.5%.
Okay, well, you know, I'm against it, so I'm reporting you people to the state and I'm sending them the budget. They need to stay within the law, period. 2% is 2%, don't go over it, don't spend money you don't have. Okay, and again, I have to read something. I got a call today from former Councilman Barry Siegel, but I have to tell you this. This is what you're giving out tonight as for the budget. It is less than 5% pitch. There's no human possible way to read this, and it's an insult to the taxpayers of the Township of Howell. Print the book if you have to, but print something that they can read. Print something we can read. That's also going to the state. It's an insult.
I'm sure, I'm going to say this out of term, but I'm sure that no one printed it like this to insult anyone.
No, they do it every year, print it like this. Who's going to read it? Who's ever going to read it?
So,
With macular degeneration and whatever else, I still can't read it.
I understand, but this is a financial
Okay,
statement,
that's
and so
okay.
it's
Going to the
easier to understand when it's all together
It's
like
all-
that
Mayor,
than if it's on 4 sheets, because it's very difficult to understand a financial statement that way.
well, you know what? You can't even see it, so that's just, okay. Anyway. Okay, April 2nd, 2019, to Mayor and Council of Howell Township from Barbara Dixell. This question is from former Councilman Barry Siegel of Howell Township. Barry called me today to tell me that the New Jersey Department of Transportation gave out grant money to crack down on texting and driving, including being on the cell phone, etc. Did Howell Township apply for this grant?
Brian?
I don't have an answer for that, Mayor. Usually the police department will handle their own grants.
The New Jersey
Since
DOT, it's not the police.
the police department would be the applicant for the grant.
Okay.
DOT issues the grant.
In other words, is Howell Township participating in this 30-day crackdown? And if not, then why not?
Mayor, from my past experience, every police department participates in these crackdowns, whether they receive the grant or not.
Why is Howell Township not on the list of towns in Monmouth County receiving the grant money?
That would have to be answered by the DOT.
Oh, it has to be answered by you people.
I cannot answer
You
why
people
they
work
didn't
here.
give us
You're
a
the
grant.
manager and lawyers. You people need to answer this. Or you need to have the information. This is a 30-day yearly campaign to crack down on drivers in an effort to make people wake up, pay attention, obey the law, and make the roads safer to drive on, and also is an effort to reduce traffic accidents and traffic fatalities. The grant was about $5,500 per town. According to Councilman Siegel, the program starts tomorrow. I was advised, it is advertised on nj.com or Brick Patch. I'll give you a copy. Copy for the council, copy for the, but shame on Howell if they're not in this. They're the only town in Monmouth County. Shame on Howell. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Could I just quickly, I realize it's public, but Mrs. Dixell, I just really need to say this, and I know that you understand this. Chief Kudrick is very strict and very strong on the anti-texting. Now, just so many grants are going to be given out, and
Every town, and we're not on it.
I'm not saying that he did or did not apply. He always applies for Safe Corridor and any other grants that are available. But rest assured that the chief of police in this town takes texting while driving extremely seriously.
Well,
So the
I am
$5,500, whether we got it or not, will not diminish
I'm
his
officially
concern.
requesting on behalf of the citizens of this town a full explanation at the next meeting, and I expect to get it. Thank you.
I'll text him and ask him to
I
give us
want
something.
a full explanation as to why Howell Township is not on this list. You guys.
Jerry Dixell?
Jerry Dixell, 62A Piazza Victoria, Freehold, New Jersey. 983. The 24-passenger shuttle for the bus center is barely needed. I am on the Senior Advisory Board. Thank you on your behalf of the Senior of Howell Township.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Is this Dawn and Ellen McGurr?
Good evening. Don McGurr,
Good evening.
Doris Avenue, Howell. I've been asked to read this letter into the record. It was sent to the town manager, and I'm sure you all got a copy. It was written by some of the key people that are trying to reorganize the Historical Society, and they felt that with your widespread public TV show that we might, it might behoove us to get the message out that we're sending to you, and otherwise, if it's not read into the record, we might lose some opportunity to let everybody know where we're at and maybe generate some more interest, because the more people that get involved, the better we are. So with that, I would only preface my comment, my reading the letter by saying that there is mention of the old society and the new society. I believe you mentioned, you called it the previous. In this letter, they refer to it as the previous society, and the new people that are reorganizing as the current society, just for clarity. And again, it's from the people that are forming the new committee. We want to thank you for providing us with specific requests that hopefully will assist our position. We have given careful thought to each area of need and have addressed them to the best of our ability. Although there are many issues to address, it seems the first item that must be resolved is the proper termination of the previous society and identification of ownership of the property in the Mackenzie House and the Ardena Schoolhouse. At meetings and in paperwork, we have provided a vast amount of information that would warrant the termination of the previous group. Much of that information was confirmed by various other sources as well. With regard to ownership of the property in the Mackenzie House and the Ardena Schoolhouse, there are two categories of possession: items that were donated and items that are on loan. You've been provided with photographs taken in the Mackenzie House showing where the where the ownership and loan notebooks are kept. Everything is well documented, as well as manila folders with the actual documents that were received. You also see some sample photos of notes in the notebooks and acquisition forms. The possessions in the Mackenzie House and the Ardena Schoolhouse are owned by and are expected to be under the care of the Howell Historical Society. Therefore, when the previous society is terminated and the current society needs to take over ownership and care of the property, we are once again asking that this issue be resolved and requesting that as of April 2nd, 2019, the current members of the Howell Historical Society be recognized as the entity that will take the historical torch that was lit back in 1972 and return the society to its current intent, the preservation and teaching of Howell's history to others. Those who have joined the current society are anxious to move forward and to accomplish the goals that we've set. You have suggested that we consider several other issues, including reasonable but timely benchmarks to be accomplished, identification of funding sources, and reasonable goals to make sure repairs are made so the property is safe when accessible to the public. We've carefully considered all of the items in the report from Mazer, and attached to the documentation that was sent to you, you will find that the repairs have been listed and divided into phases. Phase 1 and 2 must be completed as soon as possible. We have an opportunity to apply for matching funds for that work from the Preserve New Jersey Historic Preservation Fund, but the application must be submitted by May 2nd at 4 p.m. For this, we need bids immediately to get the application completed in time, as well as to complete the 501c3 application. It needs to be submitted in order for us to get the grant. We will complete those applications as soon as we are recognized as the current Howell Historical Society. In your packet, there are notes attached to the other phases indicating priorities as well as suggestions for how the repairs can be accomplished. Behind the scenes, we have already accomplished a great deal in order to be ready to move forward as soon as you give us the go-ahead. We have a tentative list of officers to function until an election can take place. We have formally requested to be recognized as the reorganized Howell Historical Society. We have acquired an EIN number. We have opened a bank account at the Garden State Community Bank in Farmingdale. We have the form for the 501c3 ready to be completed and submitted. The letter indicates we have 24 paid members. As of today, that is increased to 25, and money has been deposited in the account that was opened. We have a venue for a Howell Historical Society reorganization meeting set for April 25th at 7 p.m. at the Ardena Baptist Church. We would invite, of course, everyone in the public to be there. We've spoken to Jesse Smith about his family's interest in the house. We have the criteria and application for the New Jersey Historic Register. We have the contact information for Gail Hutton at the Monmouth County Park System regarding the New Jersey Historic Register. We've contacted Shelley Riley and asked her to send us the registration form for the Monmouth County Archives Day when it is available. We will be making a presentation on the historical value of the Mackenzie House and its owners. We've contacted HIF Group to request a quote for nonprofit liability insurance for the Mackenzie House and grant donors. We have made tentative bylaws to be considered by membership when we begin meeting. We arranged for Lee Schaefer to make a presentation on the historical value of the Mackenzie House at the Howell branch of the Monmouth County Library on March 28th. That was done. 37 people attended. We have pursued a variety of avenues for funding sources. We've acquired information about the next round of grants for the Monmouth County Historic Preservation. The deadline is in November. We have an application. That money could provide matching funds up to $7,500 for brick and mortar projects, as noted in the repairs list. We have the contact information for Dorothy Guzzo, Director of the New Jersey Historic Trust, and the contact information for Bob Craig, Historic Preservation Office within Parks and Forestry. We have already started pursuing a variety of ideas for fundraising that we know can be accomplished, and again, we'll be working on them as soon as we are recognized to do so. I would also add, from myself, I know that several of these people that are involved are active in other fundraising and very well experienced in raising money for nonprofits within the town, and if you saw the list of names, you would probably recognize them from other activities that they've been in. These are people that are very active in the community and have the community's best interests at heart. To continue with the letter, we have set goals that we believe are reasonable and achievable. Although our main goal is opening the Mackenzie House and the Ardena one-room schoolhouse to the public, we realize that a great deal needs to happen in order to reach that goal. We have committed members who are ready to get their hands dirty and get the job done. But with that said, realistically, it will probably be the spring of 2020 before we are able to open the buildings to the public. Here are the specific plans to be carried out. We have evaluated the needs assessments for repairs to the Mackenzie House and indicated that what we can do to get those jobs done, and that's in your attached list. As soon as the Howell Historical Society is reestablished, we can begin working in the Miller section of the house because it is not affected by the work to be done in the basement. We will install a time-appropriate railing upstairs along the tight winder steps, clean and paint the rooms, and take special care to appropriately clean the possessions housed there. As soon as Phase 1 and 2 are completed, we can begin work on the main house. Every room needs to be emptied, the cracks plastered in, cleaned and painted, and all of the possessions in each room need to be cleaned, organized, and properly displayed. Yard work needs to be done to improve the curb appeal. We want people to look at the house and have a desire to get inside and learn more about it. Attention needs to be given to the outbuildings and their contents as well. That part of the project can begin at any time. And then we have members ready to do that work. We have received permission and have made plans for the reorganization meeting, as I said, April 25th at the Ardena Baptist Church Hall, and we've attached a flyer for your use. We will be participating in Patterson Family Fun Day with a table of information about the historical value of the Mackenzie House, and that's on May 5th from 10 to 3. If you need any further information, we will do our best to provide it. As I hope you can see, these people are very anxious to move forward, and they're willing to make sure that the Mackenzie House and Museum continues as it was intended when Jessie Mackenzie generously donated her home to the Township of Howell for the benefit of future generations. And that letter is signed by Kathy McKee, Ann Malsbury, and Ann Julian. And we thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe,
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question for Mr. McGurr.
Yes.
So it's obviously.
Really?
I'm sorry, okay. Is it appropriate to ask him a question this time?
Go right ahead.
All right. One quick question, and I attended the information session last week. It was very great. I had one question. In addition to all the stuff, your interest in the Mackenzie Museum, what other historical sites have you worked on in Howell Township?
Me personally?
The group, you and Miss Malsbury, Miss McKee, and Miss Julian.
I personally can't answer that question because my role has been as a support person for my wife, and some of the people are not comfortable speaking in public and so forth, and I kind of stepped up to give some help
I
in my
appreciate
own
that.
way, my own expertise.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Joe, so please go through the process that we have to do as council if we were going to move forward and change one committee for another committee, and what paper, do we have to submit paperwork, or what is the whole?
No, I will look at it, but we've already terminated the relationship with the past Historical Society based on their default under the lease agreement.
Okay.
Something that we have to look into, and this goes to a point that Mr. McGarry made, was whether or not any of the property there is owned by the Howell Historical Society. So, for example, I know the old schoolhouse is, and to the extent there's any items in the house that were, that's not something that we as a council can take from them and give to a new group. I mean, obviously, we would have to pay them for that. But after that, assuming that their plans are suitable and assuming that council approves of them and is willing to sort of entertain a new historical society, it's as simple as putting together a resolution, and we can have that ready to go.
Okay.
So most of the work in terms of formation, bylaws, all that, that's on their end, and that's something that they're going to have to do and then provide to us so that we can see everything, as part of our due diligence.
Thank you. So my question for you was, do you have the cost for renovation, the total cost?
I think everything,
It was in the
it's
packet,
an
okay.
extensive packet that I didn't want to take up the council's
That's
time
fine.
and public
I'll
time.
take a look at that.
They have it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I just have one question for the township attorney. Given, and again, I'm not a landlord-tenant expert, but given that there definitely needs to be an entity called the Howell Historical Society because of the way that the house was donated for use by the Howell Historical Society. In the case where you have a landlord-tenant relationship as you had with the old society, and the tenant defaults on the terms of the lease, is it within your legal power as the landlord to take possession of the property that's in the house?
The short answer is no.
Okay. Just trying to find a way that, we can maintain control of what's there.
Right. The township has the house, it has the property underneath. To the extent any of the donated items are still owned by private individuals, then it's up to those private individuals to designate who's going to caretake or curate the items. If they want it to be with a new group, then they should notify the township and they should notify the Old Historical Society. To the extent that the Old Historical Society has an ownership interest in it, that's a different story. So
And if that entity no longer exists because of the failure,
it complicates things.
It died some sort of a natural death.
It makes things very complicated.
Okay. I don't want to take
it's
up any
something
more
that I would
time.
have to tease through legally and figure out what as of right now, I don't know of anything in there that is owned by the Historical Society. You may, but that's something we can circle up about offline.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Evelyn, please.
I have a question for Mr. Clark, so stay, Mr. Merger, because you may have something to offer to this. The items were either donated to the Howell Historical Society or given to the Howell Historical Society that are on the building presently.
Or loaned.
Or loaned, I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. But the Howell Historical Society, as a nonprofit, no one person or group of people should have ownership of any of the things that are in that building as a nonprofit. Would that not be an assumption to make?
That's correct. So if it was donated to the Howell Historical Society, then the ownership is in that entity. It's not in any one of the individuals who may have belonged to the entity.
Exactly. So when you said possibly purchase from the Howell Historical Society, if no one person owns it because they were a nonprofit, then I'm not sure who anyone would purchase from.
It would be from the Howell Historical Society, Inc., or whatever corporate name they're using as a 501c3. They still exist under the law as a corporation. They're just a nonprofit.
So that 501 was reinstated?
I will have to look into that. I think last year at this time, or whenever we were looking into it, there was some sort of reinstatement, or there was something that had happened to at least lead us to believe that it had been revived or otherwise was active.
And would that make would there be some consideration given should that 501c3 not be in effect?
That's a different issue. I wouldn't have an opinion one way or another about it. That would be up to the state.
So if it's not in effect, okay. So we need to know what's in effect and what isn't, basically.
That's
Would
correct.
that be reasonable? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. McGurk.
That's right.
Mayor, I have one more question. Mr. McGirt, did you hire somebody, an outside professional, to put together this sheet?
That was prepared by one of the, I think, Lee Schaefer.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Kathy McKee?
Hi, Kathy McKee, 35 Merrick Road. I'd like to thank Don McGurr for all he's done for us with presenting the whole situation that we're in right now. I don't really have much to say, in addition. It's been something that's been pending for years, and I think I've said a lot already. I do hope that it can move forward finally. I'd also like to mention, in regards to your question, Mr. Russo, about additional buildings, we did all work on the schoolhouse when we were part of the old Historical Society, going back many years. It was a very viable, building to be showing to the public, and as you know, having been there as a school kid, the children really enjoyed seeing what things were like years ago, and it was a very pleasant experience for everyone. And it is in need of maintenance, however the legalities can be worked out. I'd also like to readdress the issue with the Shade Tree Commission, because Arbor Day is coming up, and it was always such a special day for all of us who worked with the Shade Tree Commission. Certainly I worked on it for many years. And it's just ironic that right before Arbor Day, 7 of the members are being dismissed without apparent cause. And I did speak after the meeting with some of the members, and they expressed being ashamed and humiliated and in a public manner like this. For no reason. They did try to do a very good job. So I hope something can be worked out with that in a timely manner. That's really all I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Regarding the, go back to the original 501c3, when you said that the schoolhouse went to the first 501c3, wouldn't that, if we contacted legal on the donor side or somebody from the family on the donor side to say that this first organization is defunct and there's a new organization, is that a way that we can kind of incorporate the schools into the Mackenzie House?
I would have to look into that because it gets a little bit sticky, and it's going to depend a lot on the specific facts. Right now, or at least as far as I could tell, the ownership of the schoolhouse was vested in the Howell Historical Society. I don't know what the circumstances of them coming into possession of it were, so I'd have to take a look at the facts and kind of figure out what we could or couldn't do in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Joe DeBella.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm Joe DeBella. I live at 41 Lions Court in Howell Township, New Jersey. A couple things I want to cover. I have not attended many council meetings since my time as mayor had come to an end, principally because I felt I had served my time, and frankly, I was very pleased with the performance of my successor, Mayor Walsh, and his term. This building, in fact, is certainly testimony to his leadership in very difficult times. And after Mayor Walsh's term had come to an end, Bill Gatto succeeded him, a Ramtown resident, Ramtown firefighter, and I was similarly very pleased with his performance. And what they both had in common, as did Tim Konopka, and as did Chief Morrell, our first directly elected mayor, was this sense of leadership that, frankly, I think we are now lacking in the mayor's chair, with all due respect.
Thank you.
I have watched the meetings on cable television, and it has compelled me to point out a few things that I hope you'll take into consideration. These council meetings, in my view, are a case study, if you will, in exactly the opposite of what Robert's rules have in mind. To be perfectly candid, there's no rhyme or reason to the meeting. Rarely is there a motion followed by a crisp second. Rarely is there informed discussion and debate, started with the person who made the motion, followed up by the person who seconded the motion. You often seem completely rudderless. And frankly, with all due respect, I really orient that to a lack of leadership. Tim Konopka was a Democrat. I served with him when I was a Republican councilperson. And what he did incredibly well was run a meeting and foster and harness cooperation among the members of the council. I saw the reaction when Councilman Russo went to ask a question, just here tonight, and I got the, really? That's how the governing body functions. You are intended to collaborate and debate. You represent this community. And I have to tell you, I'm terribly disappointed with the lack of leadership with respect to exactly what emulates from this room, which starts with the mayor. I don't like getting up here saying this, and I haven't been in a meeting in some time. But having watched these meetings on television, I felt compelled to come out and read this into the record because I hear from people all the time, what happens at these council meetings? It seems like we're watching a train wreck in slow motion. Who is in charge? Who is organizing what questions go to which professionals? Regrettably, I think it's going to be incumbent on the 4 members of the council to take charge of your meeting and to redirect how you are interpreted by this community. Because you've worked awfully hard to get here, and I have to tell you, these meetings are a rudderless ship, and it will be incumbent on you to turn that around and to respect one another. Because putting aside partisan politics, there is an obligation that each of you has to make the right decisions on behalf of this community. That leads me to my second point. The Shade Tree Commission. Harvey Morrell was the first directly elected mayor. He was followed by Tim Konopka, as I mentioned. Myself, I had the privilege of serving, which I always considered a privilege. Bob Walsh, Bill Gatto. I understand that there is a disconnect between the law and your ordinance. But I will tell you, in all of the years of all of the prior mayors under the Faulkner Act of Government, the council acted as one and appointed members to the Shade Tree Commission. This is not a partisan issue. The planting and preservation of trees is nonpartisan. And the fact that members of this community who have volunteered for generations got a letter in the mail that said you're fired is a disgrace. I understand that the council members didn't even know that it happened. That is an absolute disgrace that people in this room, a veteran like Paul Sayer, who serves this community, who is a veteran on top of it, gets that kind of a letter. Former Mayor Walsh, fired. This reeks of partisan politics, and it is outrageous that on the eve of Arbor Day, we don't have a Shade Tree Commission in this community. That is a failure in leadership. And I implore the 4 members of the council to insist on a resolution and to demand that the mayor let these individuals finish their term. And if she is still in office when their terms expire, she can appoint whoever she likes. But the precedent is clear. The collaboration is necessary for you 4 to step in and stop this terrible deed from embarrassing this community. Because that's exactly what has happened. People humiliated, kicked in the teeth. They don't even get the courtesy of a phone call to say, we've discovered an ambiguity in the law, and unfortunately, we've got to make a change. Not even a courtesy phone call. That is outrageous from the leader of the community, the person who is to emulate what we stand for. Bipartisanship is what the Shade Tree Commission has been about since its founding. And I am sad to say, based nothing on other than the empirical evidence that has happened in front of us, that bipartisanship is dead. And that is a crying shame. And then the final thing, having had the opportunity to watch these meetings on the computer, is this business with the manager's contract. In full candor, I met your manager at Harvey Morell's wake. I don't know your manager. He seems like an affable person. I'm certain that based on your interest in keeping him aboard, he must be doing a satisfactory job. Under this form of government, the council hires and fires one person, and only one. That's your manager. And I'm beginning to sense, in watching these meetings, that there is another air of partisanship. Clearly, the manager is an appointed position, serves at your pleasure. But I'm beginning to get an air of something happening from a political point of view. It's my understanding that the mayor negotiated the contract. It's my understanding, actually, the mayor signed the contract. And it's also my understanding that the mayor, having negotiated the contract and having signed the contract, had to have therefore been in favor of the amount of the raise. And I've been around the block a few times. I get the sense there's this little political thing going on, so someone could vote no and say, I didn't give the manager a raise. Well, guess what? The people of Howell Township know the real story, and we can smell politics a mile away, and I see what's happening. Someone negotiates the contract in good faith, decides what the raise is supposed to be, signs the contract, and then waits for the right political opportunity to quickly say, I vote no. So that in a campaign flyer they can say, I voted against giving someone a raise. You know, I may have been born yesterday, but it certainly wasn't last night. And that goes for most of the other people in Howell Township. As I say, I don't know your manager. I'm assured, or I would hope to be assured, that if you are looking to renegotiate his or her contract to keep them here, it is because they deserve to be here. Don't play partisan politics now at the end so you can score political points, because the people of Howell Township won't go for it, because people like myself and others will be here to remind the people of exactly the truth. I appreciate you giving me the consideration. I appreciate the opportunity to address you, and I thank you for your consideration. And by the way, for all of you, thank you for your service to the community. Have a good night.
Paul Sy.
I appreciate that. Thanks for all the roads that got paved.
Mayor, I'm good. We don't need to talk anymore.
You can come talk to me now if you like.
Excuse me, this is a meeting in progress. If you have something to say, please come up to the microphone.
Go ahead. I'd like to go after that.
Of course.
Thank you.
Actually, there's no one left on this. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Who, me?
You'll have to come up to the mic.
No, he said he's okay.
Yes.
Paul Dorado, 27 Firestone Drive. I'd like to thank former Mayor Joe DeBella for all the debt that we're in. Thank you very much. 'Cause I've been out here 13 years. Yeah, the Shade Tree Commission thing was really, it's a bad thing, but the $450,000 in debt service and all the bond payments that we have to do, that kind of takes a concern. So, thank you, Joe. Have a good night.
Foul language, that's unfortunate.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Okay.
Gentlemen.
I'm not going to ask again, but I will ask you to leave.
Good evening, Council. Joan Osborne, 28 Gronia Street, Howell, New Jersey. I am up here to talk about Resolution 19-132, which seeks to oppose the formation of a stormwater utility pursuant to the Stormwater Act. I was at work all day looking online to look for a different resolution that's before the council, and didn't notice this one. And I was at my office until 5, so this one appeared on the agenda sometime after 5 o'clock when it got printed and hung outside, without any notice to people in the township who might have a concern about this. People in Ramtown who last summer went through horrible flood damage caused by stormwater. And it appears, based on the statements that were made, that there's some misunderstanding about what the Stormwater Utility Act is. It's not something that's mandatory that we have to opt out to. It's just a tool that's now available to the township should they want to create a source of funding to take care of stormwater so that floods, like we've experienced in Ramtown, don't happen on a worsening basis every year. We all went through Hurricane Sandy. There was a ton of damage from stormwater. It's not a tax on the rain. It's a tax on stormwater runoff. Anything that doesn't get into the ground because of the way you've developed your property becomes the problem of the whole community. And we are all already paying for it through our property taxes. So it's not a double tax. It's just a way to make the people who are actually creating the problem have more responsibility for the problem instead of spending it out through the whole community. People who are managing their land well, doing good stormwater things like not putting pervious pavement where they could use impervious. So my concern is that this appears on the agenda after 5 o'clock without any discussion really about what it is. We're just going to put it out there that we oppose it without going to the Environmental Commission, without discussing ways that you could do a utility and maybe only tax commercial development for the stormwater that they create. There's a lot of things that could be done, but you're just taking it off the table without any discussion. And that, I think, would be a poor decision. So that's what I have on that. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a quick question for Joe. Joe or Brian, do we currently have a stormwater plan in place already?
We don't have a stormwater utility. We have ordinances dedicated to stormwater, and I will tell you right now that the definition of stormwater in the law that was just passed is identical to our definition of stormwater, so we're regulating the same thing.
So it's being taken care of, is that my understanding?
Correct, and you know, I'll defer to Jim because some of it gets fairly technical.
And my follow-up question is, are people in Howell currently being taxed currently as our ordinance is written for stormwater runoff and such?
So the answer is it's complicated. Yes, we have stormwater management ordinances. We actually adopted the DEP model ordinance back when they came out with that 15 years ago, let's say. So that model ordinance is mostly related to new development, right? So if you have a new site plan, subdivision, something that goes to the planning or zoning board, they are required to meet all the state DEP guidelines, which our ordinance mirrors exactly. So they're required to control their runoff, reduce their runoff in accordance with the state laws. The stormwater utility, the information that's out there right now is very lacking. So it's basically authorizing the formation of the utility, but there's no guidance on how to actually do it, what to charge, who to charge, and why to charge them. I've looked into other states and other towns that actually do have stormwater utilities, and what the general consensus seems to be is that if you have a property, you have some sort of impervious coverage on your property. Let's say you had 1,500 square feet of impervious coverage on a 5,000 square foot lot. The way the utilities work is they will charge that homeowner for the 1,500 square feet of impervious coverage. So it will be an additional charge on top of their current taxes. That money would then be dedicated into a stormwater utility trust fund, very similar to our sewer utility trust or something along those lines. and that money could only be utilized to fix stormwater issues. So whether it's clean streams, clean detention basins, replace pipe, hire employees to do that type of work, things like that would be covered under the stormwater utility. The problem is the DEP has 18 months to come up with guidance to provide the towns so we know what we're supposed to do. So that hasn't happened yet. They're going to have 18 months from the inaction of the new statute. So yes and no. Yes, new subdivisions are required to meet stormwater regulations. No, not every homeowner necessarily pays for stormwater control.
But we currently have a system in place that, like you said, a utility, correct?
Well, we do not have a stormwater utility. We have a sanitary sewer utility.
Sanitary sewer utility.
Correct.
And you said, Joe, you said that the language in the ordinance is the same as the...
The definition of stormwater is identical.
Okay.
So, Mr. Russo, we have a lot of older developments in town that do not have things like detention basins or stormwater controls. So those types of facilities discharge directly to streams. Those streams then run to the rivers run to the ocean, right? So it's generally maintenance on those or control on those that would be problematic.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that we can improve our existing utilities, our existing committees, our existing programs that we have. I just don't think that when we have what we have in place should be, I guess, handed over, and I guess trying to tell us what to do, what to create, and then which would result in the way I read the ordinance or the statute or the law now, as double taxation for the same service. I want to avoid that, obviously. Is the concern that it could be improved, that the current utility we have could be improved? Jim?
Well,
I'm all about improving it. I'd be absolutely all about that, trust me. I just don't want to have the taxpayers pay for the same thing twice. That's all I'm trying to do.
Right, I would agree. I think it comes down to dedicated funding versus non-dedicated funding, right? If we have a stormwater utility that's created and we figure out a way to fund it, which essentially means someone has to pay for it, that money would then be utilized to only fix stormwater problems. Right now, DPW is patching potholes, picking up bulk, picking up brush, doing everything else. They're not necessarily, going down a stream corridor that we own and removing trees or something like that. They're maintaining catch basins alongside the edge of the roadway, but they're only doing that when they're not doing 13 other things. So there's not a dedicated staff member or members doing that type of work. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to hire, let's say, 4 more people, right? And do that. Well, that's going to be an impact on your budget. If you create the stormwater utility would cover that, but then you're also increasing a tax on residents and commercial businesses. When I did the research on other states, it appears that most of them did it based on your impervious coverage. Some did it based on water usage, which I can't imagine how they did that, but they did it on impervious coverage by a block of 1,000 square feet. So a typical residential house that might have 1,500 square feet, from 0 to 1,000 square feet of impervious coverage is $1. From 1,000 to 2,000 is $2. 2,000 to 3,000 is $3, right? So this becomes an extremely complex lesson or effort on my part or my staff of GIS review, of reviewing how much impervious coverage you have on each property, right? Mr. Russo, you have 2,997 feet. Well, is that 2,997 or is it 3,001 because the GIS maps are not exact, right? So now we're going to run into those issues. Your charge might be $12 a quarter, might be $48 a year. Walmart or a BJ's, right, who has an expansive amount of impervious coverage, might have a $12,000 a quarter charge. But we don't know what the fees are yet, right? Because there's no guidance.
Well, the language is reasonable fees, right, Joe? So it's open-ended?
Well, that's what it says. There's no definition of them, and that's part of what the DEP guidance manual is going to be for. The open issue on it is, of course, obviously, bigger companies like Walmart that may be faced with ballpark $12,000 a quarter, extra sort of revenue going out the door, are surely going to challenge it. And it's going to cost those municipalities where it's challenged money. So even if ultimately the stormwater utility were to be a good idea, I would certainly not want Howell in the vanguard on it, because we're a large enough town where we're certainly going to be facing litigation over it at some point.
And one more thing to keep in mind, you know, a company like a Walmart maintains their property, right? So they're already maintaining their detention basins, their parking lots, their, you know, different stormwater facilities. So now we have to get into the actual operation of what they're going to get a credit for because they're already maintaining it themselves versus what we think we need to charge them for maintenance work we need to do. Well, I don't want to go onto Walmart's property with DPW and start cleaning the basins, right? So we don't know that yet because there's no guidance. And I don't want to be the first one in the pool saying, here's the new rules and we're going to do it this way, and then come to find out, you know, 20 other states already have done it that way and got challenged, like Mr. Clark had already said. So there's a lot of unknowns out there.
When is the anticipated guidance coming out?
It's slated for 18 months after enactment of the law, so we would be looking at about September, late September of 2020, 2020, sorry.
Yeah,
that one. So.
Okay, any other questions about that?
Just in that I'm sorry, may I? Councilman Russo, you had expressed the concern to put this on. Do you think that we would, do you want to reconsider and readdress this in an 18-month period when more guidelines are out from the DEP so that we have a better handle on what we're looking at? In the meantime, we do have stormwater policies in place. Every time an application comes before planning or zoning, you know, there's a whole, as you know, there's a
See,
litany.
I'm just caught up on the double taxation side of this. That is obviously unconstitutional. It will bring lawsuits. It is a burden on our taxpayers. Already we're paying a ton of money for our taxes. I'm caught up on the double taxation thing, guys. That's just...
My interpretation is this law is intended to put the burden on large corporations, commercial properties, and we have a rather large project coming up, the Monmouth Commerce Center, and I would like to leave this tool available. We don't have to opt out. We don't have to have a resolution, but this is intended for the Walmarts, as Jim said, the Monmouth Commerce Centers. It's not meant as a wide tax increase against the community. It's not. It's based on large, commercial businesses, industrial complexes, warehouses. So, they're the ones with the runoff.
Yeah, so
my house doesn't have that much runoff.
Yeah, I get it. Mine definitely doesn't, trust me. But I can tell you this, that I don't want to punish our businesses either at the same time. We have Target, we have Walmart, we have pretty big businesses, we have a lot of impervious coverage.
And part of this Stormwater Act, when they do take care of that runoff, they get credits. So if they're taking care of it, Walmart, they're not paying a tax. It's getting offset. So there's ways around.
Wait, hold on, 100% offset? I don't know about that.
There's ways to offset it.
The DEP is going to have to promulgate regulations, and obviously with something like that, the concern is we're going to have to monitor for compliance, and it's a question of whether or not then the amount of the credit would eat up the amount of our compliance monitoring. So we may be paying money to monitor businesses that then get a credit on their whatever the reasonable fee we're allowed to charge under it. So
additional cost?
Well, no, it's just that I don't know if we could then, so let's say we can bake into the fees that we charge with everybody monitoring efforts. That much is at least stated in the law. But if we're going to monitor, say, Walmart's detention basins, and they're compliant and they're entitled to a credit, well, then that may offset the cost of in other words, we're not going to recover from them the cost of our monitoring as a result because of the credit. So while it's encouraging, and obviously we do want people to take care of their detention basins, I mean, the offer of a credit may not be the best thing available for us ultimately. And it's just going to depend on when the DEP promulgates its guidance. So we'll see what it intends to do, what it intends to enact, and how it intends to deal, if at all, with situations like this. We just really don't know right now.
Now, even though, you know, these businesses have gigantic parking lots and driveways, and I have a small driveway, a one-car driveway, will I still have to pay money to this rain tax if it were adopted?
Under the law, and I'll read it quickly because it's very short, any fee or other charge that a county, municipality, or authority charges and collects pursuant to this section shall be based on a fair and equitable approximation of the proportionate contribution of stormwater runoff from a real property.
So, as I interpreted, that gives the town the ability to say how much someone's paying or not paying, correct? It says fair. A homeowner versus commercial property.
Proportionate.
It gives us leniency, no?
So we couldn't charge one property owner $1, and then the next door neighbor with the same size, same amount of impervious coverage, we charge them $100. It's got to be fair and proportionate and reasonable.
But keep in mind that site plans such as Walmart are required by our current stormwater ordinance to properly manage and mitigate their runoff. So, as Mr. Clark mentioned earlier, you know, they could wind up with a credit that almost would offset or even overextend our monitoring. However, your house has no ability to monitor your runoff. So you would be charged and Walmart would not, because you don't have anything built into your property. You have your driveway, your patio, your roof, your everything else, and all that water runs off of your property and goes into the stormwater system. So the residents would be charged proportionate fees, and places like Walmart might actually have no charge.
Yeah, see, that's where I have a
Because
big
once
problem.
again, there's no guidance yet to give us a little better idea of how to set this up, what those fees could be reasonably. And some of them, right, newer subdivisions, keep in mind, go to stormwater basins, typically, right? Anything built, let's say, after the mid-'80s or thereabouts. So you have a house that you bought in a brand-new development. In theory, that developer installed stormwater runoff controls and measures in accordance with the DEP standards, which is what our ordinance says. So they're already essentially paying for it in the price of their house for the stormwater controls, okay? However, a place such as Candlewood or Salem Hill that has no detention basins and just straight discharges to the streams because they were built in the 50s and 60s, right, has no stormwater control. It just has a massive drainage system that leads to multiple discharge points that go to our stream corridors. So, you know, if anybody would be, let's say, susceptible to that additional fee, it would be the older developments in town.
Would not opting, so if we opt out, all right, if we pass this resolution and we opt out, would it prevent us from improving our existing stormwater utility? Our existing stormwater
I can't
plan?
answer the opt-out question, but I can answer that at any time we can review our ordinances. I mean, you guys will see later on tonight, we're hopefully adopting 6 more ordinance changes tonight.
Yeah.
Because my office is constantly reviewing our ordinances as we find errors to fix them. So sure, we can always look at our stormwater ordinances. Like I said, we adopted the DEP model. Yeah. Is there an opportunity to revise that to be something different? Sure.
Right, so passing this resolution will not affect in a negative way our existing stormwater system, correct?
At least not on the surface of this current statute. It's written in the permissive may. So we may form a utility if it's our option not to at this point, and we can always look at our existing stormwater ordinances. We can look for guidance to other sources. We can try and determine if it's worth amending, modifying, otherwise dealing with what we have currently. if in 18 months, DEP guidance manual comes out and it seems to be something fair and reasonable and something more suitable to Howell, could we change course and decide to do that? Possibly, yeah. There's nothing that's preventing us from doing that.
Okay.
But I think for right now, given the uncertainty and certainly the likelihood of extra money being charged to people under this particular law, we may want to use the time that we have to look at our existing ordinances and see if there's a better way that we can do it while we wait and see if there's anything in the DEP guidance or any other regulations that may be promulgated under this law that sort of tell us, well, utility might be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, vague laws are dangerous, you know, especially when dealing with tax money. I would like to proceed.
May I, Mayor? Please. I think we should err on the side of not being certain on this resolution fully. And typically, don't we run these things past our planning board and the environmental commission as well before we actually, move on it as a council? So could we place this on hold until such time as planning board and environmental takes a look at it? And that way we have another bird's eye view.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Deputy Mayor, but if I understand, you would move to table it.
Yeah, that's the long way around. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to table this.
I would second that.
Sorry.
If there's discussion on the motion?
Is there any further discussion?
Not for me.
I think I've said everything I had to be said. I was up here for about 15 minutes. Yeah, again, I read the statute. I thought I understood. It's a complicated statute. It's very vague. It allows the government to tax you with reasonable fees. That's just, to me, is dangerous. And especially when we have an existing system in place, adopting this or opting out of this law, passing this resolution, from what council's saying, will not affect our existing stormwater plan, and it won't affect the improvement of same. So,
We have no intention of creating this utility, so why don't we wait the 18 months?
I would disagree. I think that,
Honestly, I think the discussion is had. I think we should just call for a vote.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, do a roll call.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
This is the table, correct?
The motion is to table the resolution.
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
no.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Okay, so, consent agenda.
Make a motion to move 9A1 through 9A14, now excluding 9A13.
A second.
Point of information.
I'm sorry, please come up to the microphone.
I answered from my seat.
I'm sorry.
Point of information is open, talking still open or not? Somebody behind me wants to talk.
The meeting was open. We had the meeting open for open discussion. We closed it. Ma'am, you heard prior Mayor DeBella get up here and scream at me, so you had to know it was an open session.
My question is, Sandra Solly, Birdsall Road, Farmingdale. You always say anyone else from the public wishes to speak. You did not ask.
Yes, I did. Ma'am, yes, I did, because Joan came up and somebody else came up. I'm not arguing.
There's a lady back there that wants to talk. And I wish to speak.
Extra business.
Allison is just taking transcription. She should know.
I don't have it word for word, I'm sorry.
Did she ask if anyone else from the public wishes to speak?
before they went into 9A.
What is your question?
Pardon?
What is your question?
The mayor did not ask if anyone else from the public wishes to speak.
No, I understand that's your point. What is your question? What would you like to speak about?
Oh, my question? Well, I was going to yield to the lady in back who did the presentation at the library because she wants to speak about the Mackenzie. And then I wish to speak about the Mackenzie plus another issue.
You're up here now, so why don't you...
All right. Thank you. All right. In regards to the Howell Historical, I want to see some clarity and I want to see some transparency. You're saying the old historical, the new historical, and the new group that used to be the Howell Heritage, now they want to be the historical. Now, they were all members of the Howell Historical. They were removed as a member in bad standing 15 years ago. And when they had an attorney come in, the trustees hired an attorney, and he was present at a meeting at the old Preventorium, and I walked in on the end of the meeting, and he was saying, if you want to be a member, you got until July 1st to pay your dues. I was the only one there. There was only 4 days left before the end of the month, and it was going into 4th of July weekend. I sent 2 checks, one to the treasurer and one to the attorney. I was the only one 15, 16 years ago that got back in. Now, I feel that I'm being discriminated against because I'm being blamed for being with the trustees. I wasn't with the trustees. They hated me. I was only there because I wanted to watch what was going on for the building. I wanted to protect the building.
I'm sorry. I think the point of all this with Mackenzie House is to leave the past in the past and to try and move forward. So to see if there's an actual feasible plan for renovating the property. I know that we've rehashed a lot of old ground with regard to whatever transgressions may have occurred. I think we're probably better served focusing on the future. So I don't know that anybody's blaming you for anything. In fact, this is the first I've heard of it. So I think we're probably moving forward is probably a good thing.
I want to know if there's transparency in the new group. Have they been collecting dues for the last 3 years? Are they incorporated? Because they could have been members for the last 16 years. There were 40 of them. They could have come back. They would have had the majority.
The new group just sent in a letter, and they're just making a pitch to the township for their recognition. So there is some due diligence, as I said previously, that we have to do as a township before anything is decided what to do with the Mackenzie House.
That's not my issue. My issue is, are they going to be selective about who they allow to come in as a member? Because obviously they don't want the old trustees to come in.
I would recommend contacting Mr. McGear. Apparently whoever has written to the township can't speak for the Historical Society.
I understand that. But what I'm saying as a member, Mr. McGurr hasn't had anything to do with historical for the last 16 years. I've been there since the 90s. And now all of a sudden, I'm not going to be allowed to be involved with the new group because I'm supposed to be affiliated with the old trustees.
Have you asked if you could be affiliated with the new group?
They don't even look at me.
Well, maybe you should reach out to them and find out.
That's what I'm asking.
I can't force them to. I would suggest you contact them.
I don't have to contact them. I just said it. And I've said this before. Elaine Taylor, Tara Dolan, Lynn Gillette, Evelyn O'Donnell, and Sandra Solly were the last legally elected officers. Supposedly, Robert's rules said, you serve until you're replaced. We were not replaced. We were eliminated. So then it was only 5 or 6 trustees that took power of the historical, and I resent being blamed for anything that's happened in the last 10 years because Elaine Taylor is president. We did everything we had to do. We did membership. We sold gifts. We had functions. So now all of a sudden, we're being blamed because the 5 trustees didn't pay the dues to the state for 13 years. I'm sorry. We thought the treasurer was doing everything she was supposed to be doing.
Well, in fairness, it wasn't just the failure to pay dues. It was the failure to comply with the terms of the lease agreement with Howell. There's still, in fact, an outstanding balance on the propane bill that was designed to keep the place warm. So it's very difficult to, like I said, we're probably better served focusing on the future.
All I know is the liaison from the historical went to the manager of the township at the time, and he acquiesced to take care of the propane. Now, DPW went in there all the time. If there was a problem in the basement, DPW went in there. Public Works, Building and Grounds were always in and out of the building. Nobody ever filed a report and said, oh, these horrible things are happening in the building. So all of a sudden, after 1982, we find out we were supposed to be raising hundreds and thousands of dollars to be putting on a new roof, new siding, new this, new that. That was never in the lease. It just said we were responsible for the inside, the painting.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry, that's what I'm just telling you what happened.
I read the lease as recently as 2 days ago. I read it before I drafted the letter. I can tell you that it certainly applies to maintenance and upkeep of the property as a whole.
So senior citizens were expected to maintain a township building on the exterior.
I don't think there was any requirement that the members do the work. They certainly could have contracted for it.
We had less than $25,000. Are you kidding? I swear to God. Anyway, my issues. I'm going back to an old agenda from the, November 15th. There was a couple of things I wanted to ask. Resolution 18-291. Authorized return of whole route performance guarantee, Ocean View Reinforcement Project, JCP&L.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. I'm sorry. But if we don't have that information in front of us, how can we answer a question?
There's no way. I mean, this is stuff that's 5 months old. We can't possibly answer it without reference to the resolutions.
What's the question? I probably know the answer. Let's just get it over with.
It said, Randolph Road, Oak Glen Road, Easy Street, Bardsall Road, West Hurley Pond Road, $40,000 plus interest, less than $20,000 to be paid to the township for use at the township's discretion in addressing the damages to the whole route. So I wanted to know, is that whole route completed?
Correct.
And did the town get the $40,000?
Correct. There was a resolution last month accepting the funding on behalf of the JCP&L for damages to the roadway, which we turned around and are utilizing in our patch program to repair those roads.
But you're saying patch, not pave.
It wasn't to repave it. It was just to repair the minor damage that was scratched. Your road was not damaged by the power company. Your road was damaged from years of use that needs to be repaved. Two different things. So I can't put JCP&L on the hook for repaving all of Birdsall Road when they had nothing to do with its damage.
But what's all the damage down there by the golf course? You're telling me that the big trucks?
That was there before they started.
It's broken up every day I go by. I'm sorry.
You're right.
It's horrible.
And we're going to talk about capital funding to hopefully repair that later.
It's horrible. All right, now another question about this agenda, because there were certain things that were removed, and I just want to know if you went back.
Which agenda? The November agenda?
15th.
All right. Well,
November 15th. I just want to know if you went back and did this. Resolution 18-312, authorize developers agreement. Now, this is crossed out, but it was like 5 or 6 of them. With Howell Family Apartments relating to the agreement between the Township of Howell and the Fair Share Housing. The resolution authorizes the developers agreement with Howell Family Apartments relating to the settlement between the Township of Howell.
It's done.
But what was that? The affordable housing? Was it had something to do with the affordable housing?
Correct. It was the developers agreement.
All right. So no money?
That was later. That was the performance bonds that were approved last month.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Didn't you say something? Is there anyone else that would like to come up?
Lee Schaefer, 2 Ardmore Road. I really hadn't intended to speak tonight, but a couple of things have come up during your conversation that I kind of think we need to address if possible. One of the things I'm very excited to hear about is the fact that the former Historical Society has been terminated, because that looks as if we're going to hopefully be able to move forward. One of the things that was in a letter that I had sent recently was about the incorporation certificate. The incorporation certificate says Howell Township Historical Society and Committee Incorporated. At the time when that certificate of incorporation was done, the Howell Committee was the equivalent of today's Howell Council. So therefore, I would assume, and I know that's a bad thing to do, but I would assume that at this point, any possessions that are in the Mackenzie house would be belonging to the Historical Society, which is defunct, and the committee, which is you. So therefore, I don't understand why it would not be a common sense measure to just assume that you folks at this moment have responsibility until there is a new historical society. And if the, it has been asked many times, is my understanding. I know several times recently for a resolution for the new historical society. And it's not so much new, it's just so much as we have to have a historical society in order to accomplish anything. We have 24 people who have paid money to join this organization. And we need an organization that represents those people who are willing to work, willing to fundraise, willing to do whatever it takes to save this house. And one of the questions that was asked was, does anybody have any experience with anything like this? And I would say, yes, I do have experience with that. I was part of a group that went before the planning board in Farmingdale to save 15 West Main Street. It had a big red or fluorescent orange, whatever color that paint is that they use, 15 on the front of it, and it was ready for demolition. And it was within a couple of days of that we went to the planning board and explained to them the value of that house. It was the original 1867 Henry Cottrell homestead. And we were able to get that stopped so that the person who owned the property, Kerry Green, he took responsibility for renovating that house and sold it, but the house is still there. So I have experience with that. Also, when Virginia Woolley and her son John purchased the Wainwright house, my son and I were able to get funds from a donor in Farmingdale, and he and I did all the work. We did all the tear out and all of the restoration of the kitchen area, including the original walls that were there before the additions were made with the cedar siding. So I do have some experience with this. As far as the grant writing portion of this, I wrote some grants for Farmingdale School. The major one that I got was from Ocean Bank. It was for $25,000 for the Library and Media Center and for the purpose of encouraging boys to read. I'm just checking my notes because I was writing them down as you folks were discussing things. I would hope that we're not going to have to go for several more months or weeks or whatever before we could come up with a resolution for this new historical society, because we have a date of May 2nd when we could apply for a grant. And anything, from what I've been able to tell, anything after that isn't until November. Now, Mr. Russo had asked about the listing of repairs. And yes, I did go through very carefully through that listing of repairs, and I had spoken with Jesse Smith, who you received a letter from him today, I believe. He's a structural engineer, and he's also the grandson of Jesse McKenzie, who donated the house. I have the letter here, and I'd be happy to read it to you if you want me to put it in the record. But the main thing is, he said also that this does not have to all be done at once. It can be done in phases, which was what I had projected in that paperwork that you received. And the main thing is, in order for the phases to take place, we need actual bids from contractors. I'm sure that Howell Township must have contractors that you use for all the building and repairs and renovation of this building and so forth that you've used. And that's what we need. We can't determine how much money we can raise until we know how much money we need. But we do know that most of these are matching funds grants, and you know, there's a lot of money available. I had a lengthy conversation with John Fabiano last week, and he told me that there's a lot of money available that we can qualify for. But we have to be a historical society. We have to be tax exempt, which means we have to refile the 501c3, which we can't do until we are a historical society. So everything is waiting for this one decision. And I don't really understand, I guess, the process of a resolution. I don't understand why at this point we can't go with, you know, a motion and a vote, that this would be a sensible direction to go. I have submitted photographs and information about the loan of the possessions, the Historical Society being the guardians of the possessions in the house. And since you have terminated that Historical Society, it basically is your responsibility now to determine what happens to those possessions. And we are perfectly willing, able, and ready to roll, but we need something from you that makes this official so that we can proceed. I think you can see from the letter that Mr. McGurr read that, you know, a lot of thought and planning has gone into this. And I personally, as of yesterday, joined this group myself because I think it's worthwhile. I was a little bit hesitant only for one reason, and that's because I am the president of the Historical Society in Farmingdale. And I did not want to do anything that was going to go against that Historical Society. In the meantime, I have contacted all of our members. I have spoken with them and have their blessing to be a part of this. Their reaction was, if there's anything you can do to help Howell Historical Society, by all means, go for it. And 3 of them were at the presentation last Thursday night. They are supportive of this new Historical Society as well. So I'm asking you, please, you know, don't keep this going on month after month, because the house is deteriorating. We want to see it saved. I have this letter from Jesse Smith's family here. They basically are saying, our grandmother decided not to leave this house to us, her family, but to give it to Howell Township so that this would be maintained as a museum and a library. That was her death wish, rather than leaving it to her own children. And I believe it's our obligation to take responsibility for this and to follow through with the agreement that was made. When Howell Township accepted this, they accepted the responsibility for it, and that's what I'm asking you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you for all the work that the new committee has done. I think we're just waiting for some information from legal counsel.
Sure. So there's a lot of moving parts with this. I mean, this is a situation that's got a 36-year history to it, and it's very difficult to tease it apart and put something reasonable together in a short amount of time. We're looking at everything. We can't act by a motion tonight, unfortunately. It's only by resolution or ordinance. But, you know, I've got some research to do on the past Historical Society. We do have a deadline in our letter for them to turn over certain objects and that might have been in the house. So there's a few things that we have in progress right now.
Please.
Sorry for coming back up twice. Joan Osborne, 28 Baronia Street, Howell. As I was sitting back there and reflecting on some of the comments that were made by former Mayor DeBella, I was increasingly getting upset because I felt like it was a rather personal attack on the mayor. My experience with the mayor and in coming to council meetings is I think she has transformed the council and the way it treats its citizens who come and make public comments. When I first started coming to meetings, I was kind of appalled at the way citizens were treated and disrespected when they would come and ask questions. I want to thank you, Mayor, for treating most, at least in my experience, the people that come up with dignity and respect. I feel that it was a personal attack in that it sounded like you were being accused of being partisan by someone who came here with a partisan agenda, who's upset about what's happening with the Shade Tree Commission, but he used that as a vehicle to personally attack you. And I doubt that he has ever contacted you prior to today to indicate to you that he has some problem with the way you're running meetings, to offer constructive advice about that. But instead, first comment is to come and yell at you because you're not him. You're not doing things the way he does things. And I think that leadership has different styles, and your style is fine. His style may be fine, but people are allowed to be different. And I just hope that, that people in realizing or hearing what was said will give you a fair evaluation, that you do things your way, he may have done something differently. Sometimes people just are different. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
One more. I'll be quick.
Had to steal it, Jerry, didn't you? Yeah, had to.
Jerry Barron, 37 Danella Way in Howell. There's a resolution I know you have on schedule tonight about a grant money for the fencing for the community gardens. I'd just like to thank you in advance. I'll help you pass it. But it's nice to know the Environmental Commission, the Green Team, we try and do things, and it's nice if council supports it. So I'm just saying thank you ahead of time for passing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, I will be closing the public portion of the meeting.
And so just as a reminder, we had a motion and a second on the consent agenda with the exception of
9A13.
9A13.
Roll call. Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond? Yes. Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes.
Nine.
9B1.
If I might, I would make a motion for 9B1, the appointment of Kenneth Pacaro. I may have mispronounced his name. If I did, I apologize. Appointing him as a member of the Municipal Alliance for a one-year unexpired term expiring December 31st, 2019.
Second that.
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond? Yes. Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. I would like to open this portion on ordinance to the public. Seeing nobody wanting to come up, I will close this portion. What?
I think we can introduce the individual ordinance and then allow for
We
discussion.
kind of like,
Yeah.
ordinance 10.1, 0-19-16, amend Chapter 188-11, Land Use Accessory Structures Pool Cabanas. Ordinance number 0-19-16, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/22/19 is submitted and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and that copies were available to the general public upon request.
I'll read the title of ordinance. An ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use, Article 3, Accessory Buildings and Miscellaneous Structures, Section 2, entitled Accessory Buildings of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Howell.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 0-19-16 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
We'd like to open this up to the public for discussion. There being none, I'll close this portion.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Ordinance 0-19-17, 10.2, amend Chapter 188-12, Land Use, Accessory Structures, Fences on Corner Lots.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that
Read it.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
So just to interrupt for a second, too, after Ellison does her bit, maybe we could open it for public discussion, and then we'll do the motion, because then everything's in.
I'll read it. Ordinance number 0-19-17, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/22/19 is submitted and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and that copies are available to the general public upon request. I would like to open this portion to the public. I will close this portion. May I have a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 0-19-17 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Second.
I would just like to read the title of the ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 0-19-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use, Article 3, Accessory Buildings and Miscellaneous Structures, Section 12, entitled Fences and Walls of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Howell. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Ordinance 0-19-18, 10.3, amend Chapter 188-36, Land Use, Corner Lots, definition of accessory structures. Ordinance 0-19-18, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/22/19 is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and that copies are available to the general public upon request. I would like to open this portion.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mayor. Title of ordinance. Ordinance number 0-19-18, an ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use, Article 5, Lots and Yards, Section 36, entitled Corner Lots of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Howell.
I would like to open this portion of the meeting.
Barbara Dixell, 62A Piazza Vittoria, Freehold, New Jersey. Corner lots, there's an application that's going to be coming back to the planning board for the 97,000th time, is this Gil Petroleum thing. And I have to ask you about corner lots. The ordinance, definitely corner lots. Any service station, convenience store must be on a corner lot, must be on an intersection. How does their corner lots, they're not even minimum requirements, 80,000 square feet. They don't even have 20,000 square feet. How does this ordinance, which I hope will affect them, how does this affect something like this?
This is not really related, not really the appropriate time for those kind of discussions. This is defining what a corner lot is in reference to a house when a house does not necessarily face the same street it's addressed on, or if it faces the corner, so it technically fronts on a corner, where it actually faces both sides.
They spin the
So
house
it's,
over.
all it does, it's formalizing what we already do in practice on a daily basis. It's providing it in an ordinance so we have something to back ourselves up with when someone challenges us.
All right,
That's all this is related
okay,
to.
so in other words, if somebody challenges this thing that's coming back again, haunt us, that, corner, they're not even in compliance with anything that Howell has on its books.
Unrelated.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that would like to discuss this? I'll close the public portion. May I have a motion?
Sure. Mayor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 0-19-18 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Ordinance 0-19-19, 10.4, amend Chapter 188-4, Land Use Definition Update, Mother, Daughter, and Pool Cabana. Ordinance 0-19-19, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/22/19 is submitted and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building and that copies were available to the general public upon request.
Ordinance O-19-19, an ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use, Article 1, Title, Purpose, Definitions, Section 4, entitled Definitions and Rules of General Applicability of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Howell.
I'd like to open this for discussion. I'll close. May I have a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 0-19-19 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Ordinance 0-19-20, 10.5, amend Chapter 188, Land Use, Guarantees, Inspections, and Off-Track Improvements. Ordinance number 0-19-20, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/22/19 is submitted and is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building and that copies are available to the general public upon request.
Ordinance number O-19-20, ordinance of the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Article 7 of the Township Code entitled Guarantees, Inspections, and Off-Track Improvements.
I'd like to open this up to the public. I'll close. May I have a motion?
Mayor,
I'll make the
a-
motion.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Motion that ordinance number 0-19-20 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
I second.
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Ordinance 0-19-21, 10.6, purchase of land, Block 42, Lot 88, Lakewood Allenwood Road for open space. Ordinance number 0-19-21, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/19/19 and published according to law, is now being taken up for further consideration and public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press, issue of 3/22/19, is submitted. It is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and that copies are available to the general public upon request.
Ordinance O-19-21, an ordinance of the Township of Howell authorizing the acquisition of land known as Block 42, Lot 88 on the tax map of Howell for the purpose of open space.
I would like to open this up to the public.
Sandra Solly, Birdsall Road, Farmingdale. I just want to ask, how much money is this? Thousands or millions?
We're currently negotiating.
Oh, but you're going to buy it no matter what?
Sandra, real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off. This is going to be used by open space funds, so it won't affect the tax. It will not affect the taxpayer.
Well, no, I understand that, but how many acres is it?
It's approximately 10 acres. It's by existing Deerwood Park. I can tell you the current asking price is $450,000.
Oh, are we paying anywhere near that?
It's still being negotiated.
I understand it's
still being
wet.
negotiated, and I
Some of
can't
it's
talk
wet.
about it.
I know, but some of it's wet. You don't pay prime for wet. Thank you.
Anyone else? I would like to close the public portion. May I have a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that ordinance number 0-19-21 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
I'll second.
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Does someone want to read the ordinance?
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-19-22 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in the 4/5/19 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 5/7/19 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Second.
Ordinance O-19-22, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A:4-45.14. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Just give me 1 second. Would someone like to make a motion for the budget?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-19, introduction of the 2019 municipal budget. This resolution will authorize the introduction of the 2019 municipal budget, introduction on April 2, 2019.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor, just to clarify, the motion, or the resolution should be R-19-134, I believe.
Okay. That's why I couldn't find it. I don't have that, but thank you.
No, it looks like it was, so
Yes.
Okay.
it's 134.
Please add those numbers to my motion.
A second?
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Is there any unfinished business?
No, ma'am.
Is there any other information that we need to disseminate out? Sorry?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Any of you have anything? Just making sure. Does anybody else need to come up and speak?
No.
Okay. Regular meeting date, April 16th, 2019, executive session at 6:30, regular session at 7:30. I will entertain a motion to end the meeting.
I make a motion to end the meeting.
Second.
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
No, I want to stay somewhere.
Enjoy.
I thought he was going to say something.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes, ma'am. Have a wonderful evening.